She saw the old man stumbling through the rain, soaked and clutching a briefcase like it carried his whole life. She should have kept driving, but something in his shaky steps made her hit the brakes hard. She didn't know why she ran toward him, only that she couldn't leave him the way everyone else had. She had no idea that helping him in that storm would turn her entire world upside down. The rain came down like a punishment. Thick, cold drops that soaked through everything. Lorraine gripped the steering wheel tighter as her windshield wipers struggled to keep up. She was already 20 minutes late for her shift at the diner, and her manager had made it clear last week that one more tardy would mean looking for work elsewhere. Her hands were shaking, not just from the cold seeping through her cracked windowsill, but from everything else. The eviction notice sitting on her kitchen counter. The phone calls from the hospital about her daughter's medical bills. The way her ex-husband had laughed when she asked him for help one last time. She blinked hard, forcing the tears back. Crying wouldn't pay rent. Crying wouldn't fix anything. That's when she saw him. An old man, walking alone on the side of the road. No umbrella. No coat that made any sense for this weather. Just a soaked suit and a briefcase clutched against his chest like it was the only thing keeping him upright. He was moving slowly, each step careful and deliberate, like he wasn't sure the ground would hold him. Rain poured over his silver hair, plastering it to his skull. His shoulders were hunched forward. He looked small, fragile, but Lorraine's foot eased off the gas pedal without her even thinking about it. She didn't have time for this. She really didn't. But something about the way he walked, about how alone he looked out there in the storm, made her chest ache in a way she couldn't ignore. She knew what it felt like to be alone like that, to feel like the whole world had turned its back. She pulled over, the tires splashing through a puddle, and rolled down the passenger window. Rain immediately started coming in, soaking the seat. "Sir," she called out. Her voice barely carried over the sound of the storm. "Sir, do you need help?" The old man stopped. He turned slowly, like he wasn't sure he'd really hurt someone. When he saw her car, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe? Or disbelief that anyone had stopped. He walked toward the window, his shoes making wet, squelching sounds. Up close, she could see how tired he looked. Deep lines around his eyes. A bruise on his cheekbone that looked fresh. His hands were trembling as they gripped the briefcase. "I don't want to be any trouble," he said. His voice was quiet, dignified even though he was standing in the rain looking like he'd lost everything. "You'll catch your death out here," Lorraine said. She reached over and unlocked the door. "Please, get in." He hesitated. For a long moment, he just stood there in the rain, looking at her like he was trying to figure out if this was real. Like maybe he'd forgotten that people could still be kind. Then, slowly, he opened the door and climbed into the passenger seat. Water dripped everywhere. His suit was completely ruined. The briefcase left a puddle on the floor. "Thank you," he said softly. "Thank you so much." Lorraine pulled back onto the road, cranking up the heat even though it would make her gas gauge drop faster. The old man sat very still, his hands folded over the briefcase in his lap. She snuck a glance at him. He had the kind of face that had seen a lot of life. Strong features but worn down. Sad eyes that seemed to look at something far away. "Where are you headed?" she asked. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm not entirely sure anymore." Something about the way he said it made Lorraine's throat tight. She knew that feeling too. That lost, floating feeling when everything you thought was solid just crumbles away. "Well, I'm going to the diner on 5th Street, she said. "I can drop you somewhere along the way. Or you can wait there until the rain stops. Get some coffee. Warm up." "That's very kind," he said. "But I don't want to impose." "It's not imposing," Lorraine said. The words came out firmer than she meant them to. "Sometimes people just need help. That's all." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something shift in his expression. Like he was seeing past her second-hand coat and her tired eyes and her beat-up car. Like he was seeing something that mattered. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lorraine," she said. "Lorraine Foster." "Lorraine," he repeated, like he was committing it to memory. "I'm Harold." They drove in silence for a while. The rain drummed against the roof. The heater rattled and wheezed. Lorraine kept checking the clock on the dashboard. She was definitely getting written up for this. Maybe worse. But every time she thought about just dropping Harold off at the nearest bus stop and speeding away, she looked at him sitting there clutching that briefcase, and she couldn't do it. "You okay?" she asked finally. "You look like you've had a rough day." Harold let out a long, slow breath. "You could say that." He paused. "I had a meeting today. An important one. It didn't go the way I hoped." "I'm sorry," Lorraine said. "My son," Harold continued, his voice getting quieter. "He thought I was too old, too out of touch. He convinced the board to vote me out of my own company. 50 years I built that business. 50 years of my life. And today they told me it was time to step aside." He touched the bruise on his face carefully. "When I tried to argue, when I refused to just walk away, my own son had security remove me. They threw me out into the rain like I was nothing. Like I was garbage." Lorraine felt anger flare hot in her chest. "That's awful. I'm so sorry." "I called for my driver," Harold said. "But my son had already called him off. Cancelled my credit cards. My phone stopped working an hour ago. I've been walking for miles trying to find somewhere to go, trying to think of anyone who might help me. But when you get to be my age, when you've spent your whole life focused on work, you realize how few real friends you actually have." His voice cracked just slightly. "I couldn't think of a single person to call. Not one." Lorraine's hands tightened on the wheel. She knew that loneliness. That terrifying moment when you realize you're completely on your own. When her husband left, when her daughter got sick, when the bills started piling up faster than she could count them, she'd felt exactly the same way. Forgotten. Invisible. "Well, you're not alone right now," she said firmly. "And you're not going to be thrown away. Not while I'm here." Harold turned to look at her. His eyes were wet, but she didn't know if it was from the rain or something else. "Why did you stop?" he asked. "You were in a hurry. Could tell. You had somewhere important to be. So why did you stop for a stranger?" Lorraine was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to put it into words. "Because someone stopped for me once," she said finally. "When I was at my lowest. When I thought there was no point in going on. Someone I didn't know saw me and cared enough to help. And it saved my life." She swallowed hard. "I figured maybe I could do the same for someone else." They pulled up in front of the diner. The neon sign flickered in the rain, half the letters burned out. It looked shabby and tired, just like everything else in this neighborhood. But through the windows, Lorraine could see the warm lights inside, the people sitting in the booths, the steam rising from coffee cups. "Come on," she said. "Let's get you inside." She helped Harold out of the car. He moved stiffly, like his body had finally caught up with everything that had happened to him today. Inside the diner, the smell of coffee and grease and toast wrapped around them. Lorraine guided Harold to a booth in the corner, away from the other customers. She grabbed a towel from behind the counter and handed it to him. "Dry off," she said. "I'll get you some coffee." But before she could turn away, her manager appeared. Rick was a heavy man with mean eyes and a voice that carried across the whole diner. "Foster," he barked. "You're 35 minutes late. That's it. That's the last time. You're done." Lorraine felt the world tilt sideways. "Please. I can explain. There was an emergency." "I don't care," Rick said. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to hurt. "I warned you. I gave you chances. You're fired. Get out." "Please," Lorraine said. Her voice came out small and desperate. "I need this job. My daughter, she's sick, I have bills." "Not my problem," Rick said. He started pulling her toward the door. Harold stood up. Despite being soaked and exhausted and beaten down, he pulled himself up to his full height. His voice, when he spoke, wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that made everyone in the diner go quiet. "Let her go." Rick turned, sneering. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who's had enough of watching people abuse their power," Harold said. His eyes were hard now, cold as steel. "This woman was late because she stopped to help someone in need. Because she has compassion and decency. And you're going to punish her for that. This is my diner, Rick said. I decide who works here. Then you're making a terrible decision, Harold said. But that seems to be the kind of man you are. Rick's face turned red. Get out, both of you, now. Harold reached into his soaked jacket and pulled out a wallet. Despite everything, despite being thrown out of his company and left in the rain, he still had that. He dropped several wet bills on the counter. For the booth. And the coffee we won't be drinking. He turned to Lorraine. Come on. Let's go. Outside, the rain was finally starting to ease up. Lorraine felt numb. She just lost her job. Her last job. The only thing standing between her daughter and complete disaster. She started to shake, and this time it wasn't from the cold. I'm sorry, Harold said quietly. I shouldn't have interfered. I made it worse for you. No, Lorraine said. She was trying not to cry. You didn't make anything worse. I was going to get fired anyway. At least this way I kept my dignity. She laughed, but it came out bitter and broken. Not that dignity pays the rent. Harold was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Give me your address. What? Your address, Harold repeated. Please, write it down for me. Lorraine didn't understand, but she found a pen in her purse and wrote her address on the back of an old receipt. Harold took it carefully, folded it, and put it in his briefcase. Tomorrow, he said. Wait until tomorrow. Can you do that? I don't understand, Lorraine said. Harold looked at her with those sad, tired eyes. But there was something else there now too. Something that looked almost like hope. Just trust me, he said. One more day. Wait one more day before you give up. Can you promise me that? Lorraine didn't know what else to do. So she nodded. Harold squeezed her hand once, then turned and walked away into the rain. Lorraine watched him go, this strange old man she'd picked up off the side of the road. And she wondered what she'd just done. What any of this meant. If tomorrow would bring anything but more heartbreak. She got back in her car and drove home through the storm, not knowing that everything was about to change. Lorraine didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table staring at the eviction notice until the words blurred together. 3 days. She had 3 days to come up with 2 months' rent or they were out on the street. Her daughter Melody was asleep in the next room, her breathing rough and raspy from the pneumonia that wouldn't quite go away. The medicine she needed cost more than Lorraine made in a month, even when she had a job. Which she didn't anymore. She kept thinking about Harold. About the way he'd stood up to Rick even though he had nothing. About the promise he'd asked her to make. Wait until tomorrow. What did that even mean? What could possibly happen tomorrow that would fix any of this? She must have dozed off around dawn because the knock on the door startled her awake. Her neck ached from sleeping slumped over the table. The knock came again, harder this time. Lorraine pushed herself up, her whole body feeling heavy and worn out. She opened the door. A man in an expensive suit stood on her doorstep. Behind him was a black car that looked like it cost more than her entire apartment building. The man smiled at her, professional and polite. Miss Lorraine Foster? Yes, Lorraine said. Her voice came out scratchy. Can I help you? I'm Marcus Chin, attorney for Harold Whitmore, the man said. May I come in? Lorraine's brain couldn't quite process what was happening. Harold's attorney? She stepped back and let him in. Marcus looked around her tiny apartment at the water-stained ceiling and the furniture held together with duct tape, but his expression didn't change. He opened his briefcase and pulled out an envelope. Mr. Whitmore asked me to deliver this to you first thing this morning, Marcus said. He was quite insistent about the timing. Lorraine took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter written in careful, old-fashioned handwriting. Dear Lorraine, last night you saved my life. Not in the dramatic way stories usually mean, but in the way that really matters. You saw someone who needed help and you stopped. You gave up your time, risked your job, showed kindness to a stranger when you had every reason to look the other way. In doing so, you reminded me that there is still goodness in this world. That there are still people worth fighting for. I spent last night making phone calls. Calling in favors. talking to the few people I still trust. By this morning, I had regained control of my company. My son learned a hard lesson about underestimating his father. But more importantly, I remembered something I had forgotten during all those years of building my empire. I remembered what actually matters. People like you, Lorraine. People with compassion and courage. You matter more than any balance sheet or quarterly report. I hope you'll accept this gift. Not as charity, but as gratitude. And as an investment in the kind of person this world needs more of. With deepest respect, Harold Whitmore. Lorraine looked up at Marcus, confused. I don't understand. Marcus pulled out another document. Mr. Whitmore has established a trust fund in your name. The initial deposit is $500,000. The room tilted. Lorraine grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling. What? That can't be right. Additionally, Marcus continued calmly, Mr. Whitmore has paid off all your outstanding debts. Medical bills, rent arrears, credit cards. Everything. You start today with a clean slate. Lorraine couldn't breathe. She literally couldn't make her lungs work. This isn't real, she whispered. This can't be real. It's very real, Marcus said. He handed her the papers. Furthermore, Mr. Whitmore would like to offer you a position at Whitmore Industries. Director of Community Outreach. The job involves identifying people and causes that need support and distributing resources accordingly. Essentially, you would be paid to help people the way you helped Mr. Whitmore last night. The salary is $200,000 a year, plus benefits that include full medical coverage for you and your daughter. Lorraine's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the floor, the papers scattering around her. She was crying now, huge gasping sobs that she couldn't control. Why? She managed to choke out. Why would he do this? Marcus's professional expressions softened slightly. Between you and me? I've worked for Harold Whitmore for 20 years. I've seen him build an empire. I've seen him make billion-dollar deals without blinking. But I've never seen him as moved as he was when he called me at midnight last night. He said you reminded him of his wife. She passed away 15 years ago. Cancer. She was the one who always pushed him to use his wealth for good, to remember the people struggling beneath the weight of the world. After she died, he threw himself into work and forgot everything else, including his own humanity. Marcus paused. You gave him something back that he thought he'd lost forever. Faith in people. A reason to keep going. The knock on the door came again. Marcus went to answer it. Lorraine heard voices, the sound of people moving. She looked up to see men in uniforms carrying in boxes. Food, groceries, clothes, toys for Melody. Everything was happening too fast. She couldn't process any of it. A woman in medical scrubs came in next. She knelt down beside Lorraine with a kind smile. Hi there. I'm Dr. Sarah Kim. Mr. Whitmore hired me to do a house call for your daughter. I understand she's been having some respiratory issues. I've got everything we need to get her feeling better. And I'll be her primary physician going forward. No more emergency room visits. No more waiting for appointments you can't afford. Lorraine couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. The doctor went to check on Melody while Marcus helped Lorraine to her feet. Take your time, he said gently. This is a lot to take in. But Mr. Whitmore wanted you to know one more thing. He said to tell you that this isn't about him being a billionaire helping a poor waitress. He said what happened between you two was one human being seeing another human being and choosing kindness. The money doesn't matter. What matters is that you saw him when he was invisible. You treated him like he mattered when the whole world had just told him he didn't. That's a debt that can't be measured in dollars. Lorraine wiped her eyes. Her hands were still shaking but for a different reason now. Not fear. Not desperation. Something that felt almost like joy but bigger, brighter, too enormous to fit inside her chest. I need to see him, she said. I need to thank him. He's waiting for you, Marcus said. He gestured to the car outside. Whenever you're ready. Lorraine checked on Melody first. Her daughter was awake now, looking small and confused in her bed as the doctor examined her. But her eyes were bright. Curious. Alive. The doctor smiled at Lorraine. She's going to be just fine, she said. I'm going to give her some medicine that will clear up that infection within a few days. And we'll start her on a preventative treatment to keep her lungs healthy. No more sick nights. I promise. Melody looked at her mother. Mama? What's happening? Lorraine sat on the edge of the bed and pulled her daughter close. Something good, baby, she whispered. For the first time in so long, something good is happening. Marcus led her through the gleaming lobby, into an elevator that shot up so fast her stomach dropped. The doors opened onto an office that was mostly windows, looking out over the entire city. And there, standing at those windows with his back to her, was Harold. He turned when he heard her come in. He was wearing a clean suit now, his silver hair neatly combed. The bruise on his face was still there, but he stood taller somehow. Stronger. Like he'd found something he'd misplaced. Lorraine, he said. His voice was warm. I'm glad you came. She didn't know what to say. Every word that came to mind felt too small for what she was feeling. Finally, she just said, why? Harold walked over to his desk and picked up a framed photograph. He held it out to her. It showed a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. This is my wife, Elizabeth, he said. The only person who ever really saw me. Not the businessman. Not the billionaire. Just me. Harold. The man. His voice got quieter. She used to say that the measure of a person isn't what they do when everyone's watching. It's what they do when no one is. When there's nothing in it for them except the knowledge that they helped someone who needed it. He set the photo down gently. Yesterday, I had lost everything that mattered. My company. My dignity. My faith in people. I was ready to give up. And then you stopped. A woman who had every reason to keep driving, who had her own problems so much bigger than mine, you stopped anyway. You didn't know I was a billionaire. You didn't want anything from me. You just saw someone who needed help. He paused, his eyes meeting hers. You reminded me of Elizabeth. Of everything she tried to teach me about what really matters in this life. Lorraine felt tears starting again. I was just doing what anyone should do. But most people don't, Harold said. That's the tragedy of it. Most people don't stop. Most people don't care. They're too busy, too scared, too wrapped up in their own struggles. But you did. And that matters more than you could possibly know. He walked over to the windows, looking out at the city below. I built all this, he said. 50 years of work. And yesterday I thought it defined me. I thought losing it meant I had lost everything. But last night, sitting in your car, listening to you talk about why you stopped, I realized something. This empire, this money, these buildings, they don't mean anything if they're not used to make the world a little bit better. A little bit kinder. He turned back to her. So I'm starting over. Rebuilding. But this time, I'm doing it right. And I want you to help me. Because you understand something I forgot. You understand that every person matters. Every act of kindness ripples out further than we can see. Lorraine shook her head. I'm just a waitress. I don't know anything about running a company or doing outreach or any of this. You know the most important thing, Harold said. You know how to see people. Really see them. That's rarer and more valuable than any business degree or years of experience. He walked over and held out his hand. So what do you say? Will you help an old man try to do some good in whatever time he has left? Lorraine looked at his outstretched hand and said, yes. She thought about everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. How quickly everything had changed. How one simple choice, one moment of compassion, had transformed both of their lives completely. She thought about Melody at home, finally getting the medical care she needed. About the eviction notice that didn't matter anymore. About a future that suddenly looked bright and full of possibility.